LWN. And I mostly just recently got promoted to the Shadow Exchequer Secretary. I'm really glad to have you guys at this event. It's the Black, Asian and minority ethnic women in public life smashing the ceiling together. I just want to say that we've got amazing panel speakers and I'm really excited to hear from them. And I know you don't really want to hear from me, but you'd rather hear from them because I do. And so the panel speakers are Councillor Sahrif, who is a Tameside councillor. And also, in addition to that, she's also a magistrate. She was the first Muslim woman to get elected onto Tameside Metropolitan Borough Council on her election in 2016. We've got the amazing Sarah Owen, who is one of the newly elected MPs, one of my colleagues, who is also the chair of Chinese for Labour and the first Chinese MP to be elected. We've also got the lovely Belle Ribeiro-Addy, who is a Labour MP for Streatham, who alongside me is the first joint female MP of Ghanaian descent. And also, for those of you who don't know, we've got Dame Margaret Hodge, who is one of the most experienced MPs and is also the Parliamentary Chair of Jewish Labour Movement. So we've got a diverse panel. I just wanted to say to everybody that we are going to be recording this session because not everybody is able to participate or attend. We want this to be inclusive as possible. So if you do not want your face to be on the recording, I say just switch off your camera. This is going to be a safe space. So we do conduct all our events in an atmosphere of sisterly respect, and I know that you would all support that. So just to make it very clear that no abusive or inappropriate language will be tolerated, and if that does happen, we'll have to remove participants. And if we feel that the safe space is going to be compromised, we will have to shut down this meeting at short notice. I just also want to say throughout this debate, throughout this conversation, if you do have any questions, please put it in the button, the chat screen, and just put your name and just what your question is. We are aiming to finish this at 9:15 on the dot. I mean this, just so that we just try and stick to time. We want to make this interactive as possible. So if you are on Twitter, if you could tag at Labour Women's Net, and the hashtag is hashtag LWN BAME Women, or hashtag diffuse abuse, or hashtag ceiling smashers. So yes, I just thought that I'm going to be asking the panelists in a few minutes to talk for about 3 to 5 minutes on this theme of abuse, and talk about the barriers that they've been facing, particularly as BAME women in public life. This is basically going to be a relaxed evening, and just talk as just say it as it is. I thought I'll quickly talk about my barriers as an individual coming into politics. I'd say that my journey, for those of you that don't know, hasn't been particularly easy. It's not always easy, particularly putting yourself out there to get into politics. And initially, when I was thinking about going into politics, I remember, for those of you, I'm sorry if you've heard this story multiple times before, but I don't think everyone has heard it. Initially, when I was interested in knowing more about like politics and working for an MP, I went to speak to a careers advisor, and he basically laughed in my face and said the chances of someone like me getting a job in politics is very slim and not to bother. And these are the kind of barriers that you will face, and I feel that it's a lot harder when you're a woman, and particularly when you're a woman of colour, and also when you are a Black woman as well. the stereotypes and perceptions people have in terms of what your abilities can be. You know, even though like I'm an MP, I still do face barriers as a Black woman. You know, I regularly get trolled, but you know, it kind of goes with the experience. And I think it's really important that we talk about our experiences, particularly in politics, in also within the Labour Party, so we can look at how we can address it. And also women that are coming up the political ranks could be better prepared. I think I'm going to stop now because I know that I could go on, and I'm going to introduce Margaret Hodge, so she can also talk about her and experiences. There you go, Margaret.
Unmute. Sorry. Thanks, Abena. And thanks for telling. First time I've heard your story, so it's great. And great to be at Labour Women's Network. I used to be here all the time, and it's great to see a good team taking it over. And I wish you well. I've been on a journey for the last 5 years, really, because I've always had a journey as a woman, but I've never had a journey of anti-Jewish racism before, in the Labour Party in particular. And what I've learned in the last 5 years is I'm a woman, I'm Jewish, and I'm sort of getting old. And those three things together mean I get this intersectional abuse, which has been absolutely horrific. I'm going to read a bit of it, Abena, just so people understand. A Yid refugee cunt. My God, I had no idea there were so many. You're an old fucking whore. You're just a racist.
You're toasty. He's looking toasted. All right. You're not mad or anything else.
Sorry, Margaret. Sorry, Janice. Hi, can you put your button on mute, please? And Savannah as well.
Sorry.
That's okay. Because these things can be very annoying sometimes, the buttons things. Sorry, Margaret.
That's all right. It's horrible. You're just a racist old bag, sad old woman, stupid cow, dizzy old bint, rancid old cunt, evil old hag, vile old hag, shrieking bitch. You're a bought and paid for Zionist whore. Now, believe it or not, that is a tiny, tiny sample. But it's not just my inbox, which was awful. There's been some research done. I think this is quite interesting, by a Jewish Women's Network organization on a site in America that's called Stormfront. And Stormfront is a very right-wing site. In fact, it was the guy who was responsible for the killings in Pittsburgh synagogue. He used the site, and after the attack, it hosted posts that claimed that the attacks were a joke, which was staged by actors. But the interesting thing is what was found on that site. There were 9,000 threads which were anti-feminist. And 60% of those were not just anti-feminist, but anti-Jewish. So somehow Jews invented feminism, which I don't mind so much, but it was a sort of the combination of the two, again, the race, ethnicity, and the gender. And then really interesting, Luciana Berger and I had 15% more mentions on that site, although we were much less famous than two Jewish men, prominent men, Ed Miliband and John Bercow. So this intersectionality of abuse and difficulty fights us all. And the other thing I just want to say about anti-Semitism before I move on to the more positive is what's been one of the really two powerful things in the last year. One is that the fight against... Hello?
Sorry, Candice, can you... Oh, she's put it on mute now. Yeah.
The fight against anti-Semitism in Labour has been led by women. It's been led by Luciana, Louise Ellman and Ruth Smeeth. And the terribly sad thing is that I'm now the only woman from that fight, the original four of us, that is left as an MP in Parliament. But I know what I've experienced is what, you know, Abena and all of you have experienced much more. And it leads me to one of the memorable moments in the last 5 years. And I noticed one of my members is here, Sanchez here. But after I'd had my little exchange with Jeremy Corbyn, and they took disciplinary action against me, it all happened over the summer. And in the early September, I went back to, I went to the GC at Barking, and I suddenly realized on the way back down there that I hadn't ever talked about my Jewish identity at a Barking Labour Party meeting. And I just wasn't sure how it was going to go down. And I walked into the meeting, and Sancho will agree with this. We're now a very diverse party. We're probably about 30% Muslims and probably about 30% Black. So I thought, well, you know, I just gave it as it is. And what was so heartening was not only that I got a standing ovation at the end, having never spoken about these issues before, but that certainly the Muslim after Muslim got up and said, it's just like the Islamophobia that I experience. And I think that's something we've really got to hang on to as a sisterhood here, that actually we're, you know, we have to work together, which is why calling this a, you know, smashing the ceiling together is so important. We've got to stick together. And that's my first message. The second is just my experience over all my years. You never win these battles. This cultural change to fight racism, to fight sexism, to fight disability, discrimination against disabled people. These are such deep cultural issues that you think you've made a bit of progress, and then you find that if you take your foot off the accelerator, you've just actually rolled back. And I feel that I thought my generation had sorted out sort of the maternity rights. I thought we'd really conquered that. And now when I look at my children, one of them worked for a council, and they tried to make her redundant when she was pregnant. Another one worked for a private solicitor's firm, and they did make her redundant the day before she had her first baby. And a niece of mine works in a voluntary organisation in a London borough, and she had to have IVF treatment, and she too was made redundant because she took so much time off to have the IVF treatment. So all these things that I think we won, you've just got to realise you can't take your foot off the accelerator. But we can smash the prejudice. And I think these are the things I think we to do. Stick together, call it out. Never be scared of calling it out. It's been really difficult in the last 5 years, you know, when people said you're making it up, you're exaggerating, you're not telling the truth, but you do have to call it out, which is why the Black Lives Matter movement has been so, so important. And it's tough, but we've got to remember as Labour Party members that equality is the value, I think, that underpins why we're all in the Labour Party. Providing equal life chances is what brings us together. So you must call it out. I think networking is immensely supportive all through my political life. I've been in women's networks and they've been really, really important. So Labour Women's Network and beyond is hugely important. I think education and training is vital. People get some sort of education. Just think about in the Labour Party, when you become a councillor, you sort of get educated and you get a bit of training to tell you how to be a councillor. We don't get enough training about how to fight inequality and racism in all the ways that we find it. And we've got to do that. And it may well be that this terrible I'm going to get the initials from EHCR report that came out last week, that will be a stimulus to getting proper training, not just on anti-Jewish hate, but on actually all discrimination together. And I think that is really, really, really important. And then I think we've got to celebrate role models. We've got some great young people tonight who are role models, who've become MPs, who are sitting there as councillors, and we have to celebrate that. And then finally, the positive action for women has been terrific. It's been one of the most effective mechanisms we've had to equalise chances for women. I do think now we've got to look at people, Muslims, people from South Asia, and Black people and people of colour, and see whether we don't have positive action there to ensure representation. I'm going to end on this. When I stood for selection, it's a long, long time ago, I was the only woman, but I was the only candidate to be asked about my childcare arrangements, because they thought as I had children, I couldn't do the job. None of the men, all of whom had children, were asked that. Things have got a little bit better. But when I now look at the new generation in Parliament, I think it's brilliant. It's complete. We've got talented, diverse, really able women from a whole variety of experience and skills. And in fact, you know what I'd love? I'd love to see an all women shadow cabinet, because I think the talent really rests with us. We can, we must, and we will smash the ceiling together, but we have to do it by working together. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I have to say your ending was so powerful. I'm going to have to steal that for future occasions. I love that. I'm now going to ask Taf to also come and speak about her experiences. I'm really excited to hear from her.
Hi everyone, good evening. Hope everyone's well in this pandemic, and yeah, we're all kind of locked inside, but you know, hope everyone's is well and sane through this period. So my name's Taf. I'm a local councillor in Tameside in Greater Manchester. I was actually born and bred in Luton, and I got married and I moved to Tameside. I've got 3 children aged 4, 2 and 1, so I'm kept very busy with them. As a councillor, I was also a Deputy Police and Crime Commissioner for Bedfordshire, and currently I'm also magistrate, school governor, and I have various other voluntary roles. I've been in public life and governance since I left sixth form college, actually. So I joined the Labour Party over 10 years ago, and as soon as I expressed an interest in standing for position in the ward I was born and bred in, unfortunately, I started receiving a lot of opposition, barriers and abuse. I'll go into this later, but the kind of general barriers I face as a Muslim woman, as a young person, as a mother of, you know, 3 children in some respects, is the cultural aspect. So sometimes I feel like I have to kind of you know, prove myself to get to where I am, to work even harder, more so than you know, counterpart men, for example. So I think as women of colour, sometimes I feel during the course of your journey, you really have to prove yourself. Even once you've, you know, smashed the ceiling, got to where you have to constantly not constantly, I hate doing this, apologizing, but you do end up apologizing and you do end up making excuses, and you know, so I just feel that barrier still, that agenda or that barrier still needs to be, still need to get over that. In terms of you know, the other sort of issue I had in my selection process, so when I was interested in standing as a councillor in 2011, unfortunately for me, I started getting quite a bit of abuse, and I want to be really open with you, because if anyone was interested in entering politics, you know, there will be these kind of barriers. So at the very beginning, my party colleagues, you know, were really fond of me, the way I worked, etc. But like I said, as soon as I expressed an interest, I started getting, unfortunately, threatening phone calls to say, and this is within our own party, unfortunately, threatening phone calls to say, don't stand in the ward. And the ward was actually male dominated, so it was a 3-male ward. And it was like, don't stand, you know, there will be consequences. So I actually, you know, I mean, I'm a very open sort of person and very forward thinking. So I reported it, and I still persisted, and I was resilient in going for the selection meeting, and I was very fortunate to get selected. Now, this unfortunately happened by my own community. So it's quite sad for me to say it, because especially when I reflect back and I just think, why can't everyone just be taken for who they are, and you know, everything be based on merit? But I think there was, you know, like I say, it was very, very male dominated, and there was no space for women. And so that was, you know, quite a sad story. And then after all that, so during my period, my tenure, I got I became an executive member for community safety, and during that period I led on some great initiatives, and I was Young Councillor of the Year I was awarded Young Councillor of the Year by the local government unit. But as soon as my 4 years came to an end, obviously there was already plans to you know, kind of get me out and deselect me, and that's exactly what happened. But the good news is, I mean, for me, I mean, so that happened. But the good thing was, I just thought, well, I'm not having this. I'm going to go and stand in a different ward, and hence I got elected a year later in 2016 in the ward of Tameside, which was very different to where I was previously. So it just goes to show, no matter what barriers you come across, whether it's from your own community or whether it's from, from a different community or different set of people, you have to keep going. And that is my biggest message for you guys today. Stay resilient, whatever barriers we face because of the color of our skin or because of what we wear on our head or what we wear on our neck, whatever we do, whatever beliefs we have and don't have, don't let that stop you from pursuing what you need to do to make yourself a better person and to make yourself accessible to society and improve society as a whole, because this is the actual people that will be missing out on your skills. So for me, I think my biggest message is let's work together to get you guys to smash those ceilings and get you coming forward. And I actually do recommend, as it was said earlier, that we should now start having positive action with BAME. We have it with women, which is brilliant, but with Black and minority ethnic women in particular, I think that would really go far in opening up more opportunities for people. And I think by having good role models in like having this kind of event is great, because you can see what kind of issues people have faced and how they've got past those, and having good role models in place to give you those give you an insight into this kind of thing will hopefully encourage you to go into public life in many aspects. So my message is keep going, keep smashing those ceilings, and and let's all kind of work together on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Taf. That's really powerful, your journey. I think some of us in this chat can relate to the experiences, and it's good to hear you share it to show that, that this is what we're going through and that things need to change. I'm now going to also invite Sarah Owen, MP, to come and speak as well.
Thank you, Abena, and thank you, LWN, for hosting this event, and everybody for attending. It's a real honour to be speaking with such distinguished panellists that also have been brave enough to share their experiences, good and bad, because I think that's an incredibly brave thing to do, but it's also necessary, because I think we've already heard some of the barriers, but the barriers in politics aren't something new. That is the way that politics has been designed, particularly Westminster. It was designed to shut women out, to shut working class people out, and to certainly shut out ethnic minorities, Black, Asian, minority ethnic people. The whole system was designed for white, wealthy men. And so if we are to break down some of those barriers, we really have to be challenging the institutions and the structures that we work in, as well as getting much better representation. And I think it's really good news. We've already touched on it already. Our cohorts 2019, our 26 were more women, more diverse. We had a whole range of firsts as well. And for that first week in politics, where we didn't have any offices, we were all sat in a big committee room together, kind of on computer banks, asking each other lots of questions. And we were in a bit of a protective bubble, because it wasn't until I went and sat in the House, in the chamber for the first time, that I saw just like this sea of white men that had been elected the other side, and a large number of those were seats that we'd lost, and they were good women that we had lost as well, and in areas that had never elected a Tory ever. So that was a really rude awakening, but also quite a shock to the system, that there was this happiness and this joy from our 2019 intake, looking at this diverse group of people, talented people that have come from a range of different backgrounds, to see more of the same on the other side was really disheartening. And I will be brutally honest, yes, I'm really proud to be the first Southeast Asian woman MP, and first Labour MP of Chinese heritage. But it's something that Taf said that really struck with me just then. was about where the role models are. So I remember a conversation with my mum. She came to this country 45 years ago to be a nurse when she was in her teens, from Malaysia. And she's been an NHS nurse ever since. And I'm finally convinced her to properly retire in January. It's been a long time coming. But I remember this conversation with her. She was so disappointed with me because I was the first member in our household to go to university. And I said, I want to study international relations. And she was absolutely gutted that I wasn't going to do law, because she was like, what are you going to do with politics? Why do you want to throw away your chance of an education on politics? And there wasn't a single person that I could say, well, look at that person, I could be like them. And it's really hard to argue with my mum. Anybody with an Asian parent will know that that's a really difficult, it's not just a generational barrier, there's a real cultural barrier there, that to go into a profession, you have this education, there's a clear pathway, but with politics, there really isn't. So role models really are helpful in breaking down that barrier. And I'm not gonna lie, there was racism along the way. Like, I remember being at a hustings, it wasn't one in Luton, but Labour members heard Tories calling me a gook. I had on the doorstep, like, and it's not always what people would assume is as harsh kind of abusive racism, but it is an undercurrent of racism. It's the assumptions that people have about you. So I was on a doorstep and with a member who had never been campaigning before, and she came with me. It's like her first time on the doorstep, and this man just answered the door and he said, I've got a real problem with immigration. And I said, well, what do you have a problem with? And he then decided to list all these ethnicities that he didn't have a problem with and that he did have a problem with. And then he came to Chinese and he said, I don't have a problem with the Chinese because they're hardworking and obedient. And at which point I looked at him and I said, well, I guess I'm just hardworking then, because I'm certainly not obedient. And you would expect somebody to balk at that, to be called out for their assumption and for their racism. But instead he looked at me closely and he went, oh yeah, you ain't got completely round eyes. And there was just, you know, as far as he was concerned, he didn't mean any malice in it. He had absolutely no kind of rude intention, but obviously that is racism, and that is the sort of thing that we have to challenge and to confront. And even when you do get power, as Abena said, you still face racism. So I was sat on the NEC and during a meeting, somebody referred to me as a half because I am mixed race. And that is another barrier that we need to address around mixed ethnicity or dual heritage people. And since coronavirus has hit, there has been a huge increase in the amount of racism directed towards East Asians, Chinese and Southeast Asians, particularly online, but we've seen a trebling of racist attacks, from people being spat at, to being beaten up, to businesses targeted. And it's always existed. It's just never really had the lid lifted on it. I've had videos of live animals being eaten and sent to me, just general kind of racist tropes. You've seen Tory ministers sharing jokes on WhatsApp with like cartoon Chinese characters on, with buck's teeth and pointy hats. I mean, through to Amazon still having loads of yellow face and adverts. I've asked them to take them down, but they won't take them down because they say they don't breach racism, even though you have a white person with like exaggerated black makeup on their eyes and their hands are clasped together and they're bowing. I mean, it's a miracle I get anything done really with my hands clasped together and all my bowing. But there is a real, I think, problem in the fact that it's not been addressed, or it's not been called out as much as it should have been in the past. But there is some real positives that have come from that. And there's a really fantastic group called End the Virus of Racism that has started up during the pandemic. And that is a group of cross kind of Chinese, East Asian, Southeast Asian people that have come together to bring this charity and this organisation together to look specifically at that racism. The work we're doing with Chinese for Labour with them, and my work with Hope Not Hate, all looking to tackle this stereotyping and racism within the media. And we had the first debate in Parliament, and it was really lovely to see so many Labour colleagues that aren't East Asian, aren't Southeast Asian or Chinese, come and speak and be allies, and really be allies. And I think that that is one of the best pieces of advice, because we will need allies, because there will be a lot of people wanting us to fail and wanting us to pull us down. So we need to be allies to each other, because we might be the first, but like as Kamala Harris says, we don't want to be the last. We definitely want to be leaving that ladder down, and if possible, leaving more ladders down along the way as we go. And I think one of the last things I want to talk about is the safe spaces that Abena spoke about. So yes, Westminster is institutionally sexist. That is the way it was built. It is institutionally racist. That is the way it is built. The internet is something new and should not have been gendered. It should not have been a place for hate. And yes, it is. And so we have the online harms bill coming up at some stage soon. And I urge everybody to lobby, whoever their MP is, to make it a safe space for women and for Black, Asian and minority ethnic people, because it's not currently, and it should be. And if we are to have a voice in politics and in the news and in our arts and culture, it's all online. So let's make that space as safe as we can.
Okay. I just wanted to say thank you, Sarah, for that. It was really powerful. I also wanted to say that Sarah has been a really good force in Parliament, really holding the government to account. I just wanted to point out the fact that she's been leading on, particularly in talking about anti-Chinese racism, which I know that it's fallen to her in terms of having to speak about it. And that's why she's very right in saying that it needs many allies, because it's just can't be one person speaking about all these issues. I just also wanted to say the baby loss awareness debate that took place last week, which was a really powerful debate. And I actually haven't got around to texting you about this, but it really resonated with a constituent of mine who I'm dealing with a really complex case. So I was speaking about issues that really kind of matter to people across the country. So yeah, thanks for that. And finally, I wanted to introduce my sister from another mother, which is Belle, and to talk about her story as well. So over to you, Belle.
Thank you. I was on a Zoom earlier this week, and someone said the most common phrase of the year was going to be, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. That's true. Yeah, it's true. But thank you. I'm really, really pleased to be speaking with such amazing women and just sharing these experiences. And I think meetings like this are very, very important for women across the country who may actually be thinking about entering certain fields, or actually even may see us and think, might have some perceptions about how we've come to be here and what it's really like. So it's very, very important that we share those experiences. And I've already experienced some of the things that some of the other panelists have said, just touching what Taf said about being met with suspicion. As soon as you decide to put yourself forward as a Black woman, there's always this idea of, oh, why would you want to do that? And that idea is bound up in racism itself as much as people may want to put it in other things. So they may talk about your lack of experience when you may have bounds of experience and people won't see it that way. Why? Because you are a Black woman, and your political affiliations are then looked at with some sort of suspicion, and then the cycle just continues. I remember being accused of being parachuted in from somewhere, which is very strange because I've lived in my area my entire life, except for a few years at uni, and even worse, I've only moved to 2 places in that place within 1 mile radius of each other. So it's very interesting to be told that I was being brought from somewhere else. And then the last strange accusation that was made for me, put myself with that, it being made an all-women shortlist, I was attempting to take a space away from a man. And they're making this point because we had a Black man there before. Obviously, he left the party in Streatham, and that made it a bit different. But the idea that creating a space for a woman is taking space away from a man is just mind-blowing to me. I know that we certainly have an issue in terms of African Caribbean males standing for positions in our party and achieving those positions, but sexism is a major issue across our party, and we need to be proud of the fact that we have all women shortlists and that we have set about attempting to make sure that more and more Black people are standing for Parliament overall. And what I've noticed generally is that when women organise, when women stand, and actually when Black people organise together and stand together, it's met with suspicion. I start to think about why this is. And that's because over the years, I suppose, whenever women meet, whenever Black women meet, and whenever people meet in this way and organise and discuss, share experiences, things start to change. And obviously that's not what people who meet this, who want the status quo to continue would like. And so I think that's why a lot of our movements and our organisations and our coming together is attacked in this way. And now I'm I think 11 months into being an MP. It's definitely felt like a lot longer, especially coming in at this particular time. And I had already experienced a lot of discrimination in terms of being a Black woman involved in politics. But over the past few years, I definitely witnessed it more from looking at the Member of Parliament I worked for just before, who was Diane Abbott, and I watched some of that go on for years. And what I noticed is, again, the more well-known she became, the higher the position she rose to, the more abuse that she got, as if with every single attempt to be a proud and upstanding Black woman, there had to be more to attempt to bring her down. And I looked at how across Parliament, and others will testify to this who have been through in over the years, you see more and more Black people coming in, working in loads of different parts of the building. And it's common. It was common for me as a Black staffer to be asked for my pass, or to be questioned on the parliamentary state, or especially when there were events that Diane was having, which may have a lot of Black people in them, facing some trouble when coming into the building. And that's something that became the norm. I remember a police officer even asking Diane for her pass, which I thought was quite strange, given that to me and to most people, it'd be very, very clear who she is. So there is that culture still within there. There is all of that still going on. And I remember coming in as a new Member of Parliament, and as well as us being confused, which I'll get to in a second, I remember actually Abena, an MP, handing her his bag and telling her, a white male MP, I think it was a Tory as well, telling her, oh, could you just hold this for me for a second? And this wasn't that long ago, talking about maybe the 80s, it would have been bad anyway, but we're talking about a few months ago. And then came an issue where they got us all mixed up. Now there are 650 MPs. There are only 12 of them, I believe, who are of African Caribbean heritage. And you'd think that given that there are only 12, I don't know, we may, not a special class, but you may start to think, gosh, there's only 12 of them. There's no way we could get them mixed up because, there's not that many of them. And there are far more white men to get mixed up, but absolutely not. I found the BBC mixed up Dawn Butler and Marsha de Cordova, and then the Evening Standard went to write about the BBC mixing up Marsha de Cordova and Dawn Butler. Instead of Marsha, put a picture of me. We then found out that Getty Images had a list of pictures of me ever since I'd been elected. Every single one of them had been labelled as Marsha de Cordova. So the Evening Standard went to go back and blame Getty Images, and then everybody went to go back and blame the BBC. And people are like, well, why are you making such a big deal of this? It's not a really big deal, but it is, because you're looking at us as one homogenous group. You do not take the time, even though there are 3 white male MPs called David Davies, and they're able to get them right, you don't take the time to look at us as individuals, respect the different constituencies we were elected to, and recognise who we are. I mean, it went as far as me being given somebody else's mail, which breaks some other different laws. But this just shows the level of disrespect that we are shown, and just the idea that somebody like ourselves could be a Member of Parliament, questioned a lot of time. Now, I was asked when I was a staffer on a number of occasions whether or not I was Diane's daughter, and this is into my early 30s, whether I was her niece. And I thought to myself, why couldn't I just be a member of staff? Why couldn't you just ask me who I was, and this is including by other MPs. It's very strange because firstly, again, weird questioning, but also which MP walks around with their grown child in the middle of the day? I think that would cause some kind of concern. But it's just that idea, those microaggressions, those little things that people say that, you know, you can't necessarily outwardly call racist, but, you know, they're questioning your abilities every single time. They're questioning who you know, why you are here, reading your work, amending your English as if it wasn't your first language, and constantly undermining you. Now, some of the things I think that we need to change, obviously, our perception and levels of respect for Black women in public life. But in terms of getting more Black women into high office, something that Diane's always said to me is look at the pipeline, look at a lot of the jobs that people have taken on before they've become an MP, and see about why there are not enough Black women in those jobs, why there are not more Black women in our working within our party. I know that as a former political advisor, every single political advisor that had been, every single Black woman had been appointed by another Black woman. The Black woman, the only first other Black woman that came before me, her name was Dorothea. She was appointed by Baroness Amos. I was appointed by Diane Abbott. The next one was appointed by Kate Ossamore. The next one was appointed by Dawn Butler. Somebody else has to appoint a Black woman. I'm sure it doesn't take a Black woman to give another Black woman a job, especially if all of them are capable, but that seems to be what's happened all the time. Now, I'm proud to be one of the most diverse parliaments in history. Half of the new intake are from BAME backgrounds, I believe. I'll do a proper count. I'm quite sure that they are, but we need a situation where it's not something that we are having to celebrate each and every time because it becomes the norm, because it's not strange to see someone that looks like us in Parliament. But I suppose one of the first things we've got to do is make it seem like it's an attractive place to be. Having watched the abuse that Diane faced, having seen the abuse I face now, it's not the type of thing that people, you know, would want to willingly put themselves in front of. So I, you know, just want to echo Sarah's point. We need to make sure that we're making it safe online, because it's not at all. And I had a situation where somebody, having been blocked from all of our servers, took the time to find my personal email address to send Diane a death threat. So we know that people are looking for creative ways to be abusive, and there's an issue of safety everywhere, and we need to make sure that we're challenging those online companies and what they're doing, how much money they're making, without taking the time to reject all of the hatred that's often directed at us just because we've decided to wake up in the morning, take a position and do our job. Now, again, just going right to what I said at the beginning, we need to think about why it is that people are so anti women like us in positions of power, and that is because we always change the status quo. That is because every major movement in which we've been involved in has led to change, has led to a decrease in power for those that would rather hold us back. So we need to support each other regardless of our individual views on some different things. At least agree where we can agree, and that is that women like us have a right to be heard, have a right to hold positions, and have a right to be anything that a man is, and have exactly the same respect whilst we do that. Thank you very much.
As to say, I like the way you ended that. I think you're right. We do need to look at why women are getting abuse, and we do need to support each other. This is a theme that's been echoed by a lot of people, and we are seeing a thing where people are being more creative in terms of abuse. And it's true, we have our voices have a right to be heard. We see the impacts during COVID in terms of policy decisions that are being made, where it's literally alienating women and ethnic minorities, and that's because we don't have anyone in those spaces kind of speaking about those kind of issues or flagging up on the radar. So thank you, Belle, for that. Belle's been championing in Parliament on quite a number of things, but she's been particularly on the hostile environment that the government has done in terms of immigration, detention, and used to be the shadow immigration minister. So, you know, she's one of the strong voices in Parliament. got great 2019 intake. I'm not saying that because I'm biased. So I'm now going to open it up to the floor for people to ask questions. If we can just keep it as short as possible, questions, just to allow the panel the opportunity to respond and just to kind of let people get through as possible. We will be finishing this meeting at 9:15, so I'll be wrapping up questions shortly before that to allow people on the panel to do the last minute comments. So if anyone's got a question, do you want to use that weird emoji hand thing? And I'll just have a look and see who's got a question on there. Or because I haven't seen anyone put anything in the box. Okay. Okay, Sarah's got a question. Sarah, bye.
Abena. Hi there. Oh, do you want
someone talking to me? Sorry.
No, yeah, I can't find the hand. It's Jackie Taylor here.
Don't worry. Okay, I've got you on the list, Jackie. Anyone else?
Yeah, Cecile, can you put me on the list? I can't find the hand either.
If you go into
right, okay. I've got Cecile and Sabrina. Right, okay. Just gonna take these batch of 4. So if you just hold on, I think I've got Rooney for the next one.
Just on the chat, Abena, I can see Sabrina and Rahini as well.
If you put you
okay.
And Victoria.
I've put them, yeah.
Okay, Victoria, okay. I'm just going to take these batch of 3 and then I'll come around to the next one. So I'm going to go with Sarah on the yours on the thing. It says Sarah BY.
Yeah.
So you're first, then Jackie, and then Cecile. So if you can, do you want to go first, Sarah BY?
Yeah,
can't see you. Sorry. Oh, there you are. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. There's
can hear you loud and clear.
Good. I'm in Exchequer, so it's a long way. My internet isn't great, so if I turn the picture off, sorry you can't see me. I don't get cut off.
No pressure to put your camera on. Don't worry, it's fine.
So thanks very much for organising this. It's such an exciting and delightful thing to be part of. I've wanted to come up to meetings before, but you know, the journey time, and I've got caring responsibilities, it's just been impossible to organise. I've got a question which is really around Labour Party policy, and this might not be for the panel now, but it's for the network to take forward. I was the women's officer in the year that we managed to select a phenomenal number of women who went on to be elected to county council. If you don't know the southwest of England, Exeter is the red dot in a sea of blue. So it's really important that our voice down here gets heard, because we represent social values in a way that they are not represented otherwise. When it comes to minority ethnic women, of which I count myself a part, but because I look white, I pass as white, I have mixed heritage. What was really, really disturbing for me is that we had a phenomenal woman candidate who came, she was so determined and so energetic, and she always is. She's one of the best political activists we've got in the city, that she put herself forward for selection for every single ward. And the way that the system is organised, there was no way that she would ever get selected, because
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry. We've got quite a lot of people that want to ask questions. So if you just, I hate to do this, but if you just can kind of.
I don't know how to. Sorry, I'll be as quick as I can. I don't know what needs to change with that. But she should have been selected, and because she couldn't get selected, she couldn't even stand for election. So she never even got to the public. Okay.
Okay, so selection process, how it locks out strong candidates.
Okay. So we had all women shortlist. We didn't need that for the women because they were so strong. They came forward anyway in every ward. But if you're from a minority ethnic community, there's just not enough people there to see what that means strategically for the whole county. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Got it, Sarah. Sarah, I've got that. Got it. I think we've got that. I completely get where you're coming from. It is an issue that I recognise as well. Jackie Taylor.
Oh yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be here this evening. I'm Jackie Taylor. I'm councillor in Sandwell, which is West Bromwich East, CRP in the West Midlands, and cabinet member for sustainable transport.
And like Sarah, my question goes to Sarah. I'm on my own. I became the first African Caribbean councillor in Sandwell 5 years ago, and managed to break that ceiling and break the ceiling to be cabinet member. But my question to you, Sarah, in terms of being the only one as such, where do you get your support from?
Okay, that's a great question. Cecile?
Okay, thank you. Once again, I really would like to commend you for putting on this event. I'm from the East Midlands, and I have to say that I'm somewhat disappointed that your speakers don't represent the region, the different regions where the Labour Party is represented in the country, and perhaps that's something that your organisation need to think about, that when you talk about representation and supporting women, that perhaps you need to take more of a regional perspective. And women are not just in London and the South East. Can I just say that I mean, it is so inspiring to hear amazing women who have managed to navigate the structures to get where they are. But my worry is that there's not enough that's been said by your speakers about the structural problems, because there is an impression that those who have got there, they've got there because there are extraordinary women. It's not as simple as that. You've got there because you have had support behind you as individuals. So please do not mislead people to think that you're superhuman beings, but you've got there because of this. So what do you do? What do women do if they don't have the sort of infrastructural support that you've all been able to acquire, whether through trade unions, through networks, etc.? What do ordinary people do? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I just wanted to come on the last question, Cecile. We've tried to make it as representative as possible. One of the panel speakers is from Luton North, and the other person is from Greater Manchester. With our training, most of our training we don't do in London, we do it outside London. We go around the country to make sure that we do make it as regional as possible, and we try to make the speakers as diverse as possible. And if you've got any suggestions, please, in terms of how we could do things differently, please email us. We've tried to get people to talk about their experiences as honest as possible. Everyone's got a different experience. With our training, we make it very clear that going for public office is not easy, and a lot of work requires into that. So we do make that very clear in training. And we try to get people to talk about their experiences, to talk about the journeys as possible. And I hope everyone else feels that we've tried to do that, be as reflective as possible. I want to kind of kick off, actually, if we can answer the questions that have been put forward by Sarah, Jackie, and still, if you want to do that. There is a question that's particularly targeted at Sarah, which is Jackie Taylor's question. So should we go with you, Sarah Owen? To answer Jackie's one.
I'll be as quick as I can, but I really wanted to answer Jackie's question in full. And first of all, Jackie, thank you very much for your question, and also congratulations and well done for being the first, because it is hard. It is really hard, but there's also a burden of responsibility, which I don't think other people put on you, but you also put it on yourself. Because there is that responsibility that you don't want to be the last, or you don't want to be the only. So how do you reach out? And I think support from wider groups, and I've already mentioned it to somebody else in the chat box there, that actually there are lots of friends of groups. There are different organisations, whether it's LWN who are going to be supportive, whether it's trade unions, and somebody's already mentioned that trade unions are quite white. And having worked for one, yes, I can say that that is very true. It can also be very male, but there will be allies within that, allies that care about issues that we all care about as well. And it's about identifying our allies, because they're not going to be the people that you necessarily think they will be. People have already mentioned in the chat box that sometimes women are the worst when it comes to being supportive and being allies. But finding who's going to be an ally to you and being able to get that support, it doesn't necessarily have to be the same person that's walked your path in your shoes. They can sometimes really surprise you. And at the end of a very bad day, my support network sometimes comes down to cake.
Not for me.
Cake and crisps is quite often my support network. But I would say that there are wonderful people out there, whether it is LWN, whether it's trade unions, and I think the Black movement within the trade unions is also a really powerful place to find allies. But also your council colleagues should be allies. They are Labour Party members and they should care about equality and diversity, and you should be able to hold them to that as well.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Okay, Margaret, did you want to come on the questions? And then Belle, and then if anyone else wants to come in.
I haven't unmuted. I just want to say a couple of things. One is that Sarah said that positive action isn't needed for women anymore, and I just disagree with that. I think that's one of my, keep your foot on the accelerator the whole time. If you actually look at selections where they weren't all women's shortlist, it was very rare.
The video with Pastor Sen.
Hello?
I think someone accidentally put the thing on button on.
Okay, I don't know what you got or lost, but if you look at the selections which weren't all women's shortlist, more often than not they selected a man. So I think that's why I said culture change is really, really hard, and I think we need to keep positive action. I do think we need to keep the all women's shortlists there. I think they've been a fantastic success, and I think we now have to reflect the Black and ethnic minority men and women. Actually, I don't know if you agree with this, Abena, is that, we haven't got enough men, actually, of colour as well. We're really bad on that. Ironically, the Tories more than we have, which is terrible. Definitely. To say that. So there's a real issue around representation that we have to do. And then can I just say something to Cecilia, who talked about networking? Networks throughout my life have been so important. And what I would say to you is, you're a councillor now, you've done fantastically well. Start a network. Just even if it's your friends to start with, start your own network. You don't have to go to an existing one. And just, I'm sure you will have 3 or 4 friends that you can think of who feel like you and who want to work with you. And if you start it, you can grow it yourself. And that's something about our own empowerment. So don't wait for others to empower us. Just take, you have to yourself, I think, grasp the opportunity. And I've done that again quite often, and it's brilliant when you get those networks up and running of sisters that you can work with and talk to and share your problems with and share challenges. You don't have to depend on the cake and the crisps. You can actually build those relationships. As you're doing, the 2019 group are obviously doing that a lot yourselves, but you can create those new networks. And I just, if you want any help, email me. But I think there are ways in which you can do it rather than waiting for them to exist elsewhere.
But Margaret, this is Cecile. No, I'm not a councillor. I've been trying to be a councillor for 10 years.
Cecile, loads of people have opportunities, want to ask questions. It's not fair on other people. I'm now going to go to Belle and Taff.
Yeah,
thank you, Margaret.
Certainly, I agree with Margaret. We shouldn't be taking our foot off the pedal at all. I'm really pleased that we still have all women shortlists, and until we have equal numbers, it's something that we should definitely maintain. And I was actually really pleased to see in the leadership contest, I think, I would say, to be quite honest, Keir Starmer was the only candidate that said he would introduce all BAME shortlists. So I'd like to see those soon, especially when we come up for our next set of selections. I think that's really, really important. And definitely, Cecilia, you're absolutely right in terms of the fact that we're not, things aren't always that straightforward in terms of getting to selection. And no, it's definitely not about being superhuman. It's more challenging for all of us as women and as BAME women when we put ourselves forward. But there is often a lot that goes into it. It is about being informed. And I know that LWN provides a lot of training in this sense, and it is about your own networks. It's about building your own bases and understanding how the different parts move together. And unfortunately, at a time like this, when things aren't unequal, when you're a white man, it's a lot easier just to walk into this sort of thing, to get that support and know who you are. When you're a woman, a BAME woman like us, it's going to take a lot more work in terms of building those different networks up through the different things you do, being informed about where opportunities come up. And sometimes it is about being in the right place at the right time, when the right seat comes up. And that's definitely not fair, but there are 650 seats in the country if it's about being an MP. Obviously, there's a whole lot more when it comes to being a councillor. But in order to achieve it, it's about being on top of it, and it actually being the right time when an opportunity arises. So definitely not straightforward and definitely not easy.
Taff, sorry, did you want to come in really quickly, or should we go to the next round?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be very quick because I'm very conscious there's a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, very quickly, with my selection, you have to look towards other support. I knew I wasn't going to get selected or I thought I wasn't going to get selected that first time around, because I had the threatening phone calls. I had the people give me the talk, you won't be good enough, etc. Why now, and the rest of it. So I got hold of the membership list, and I ticked off all those abusive people, let's call them that, and toxic people, and I approached members, who weren't in that group, let's say, and I spoke to each and every one. I visited them. It was hard work on my part, but I visited and spoke to them, and I got them to attend the selection meeting and listen to what I had to say at that meeting. So I think it depends. Obviously, it's not easy, because politics is not straightforward. It comes with people and mind games, unfortunately. But if you can, speak to the others that don't usually engage, that's what I say, and trying to build your support network with that, and they will see hopefully a breath of fresh air. Okay.
I think we've just got time to do just one more round of questions really quickly. So I think I've got Sabrina, and then I've got, is it Rahina, and then Victoria, Alicia. So really sorry, I don't think we'll be able to take any more questions after this. So do you guys want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Can I go? Can I?
Yes.
I just wanted to say a big thank you for organising this. Like Taff, I've had really similar experience. Like, I'm the only woman from a BAME background standing in my town, and I'm Muslim too, and I'm quite young, and even though I'm studying an MPhil at Cambridge, I find that, again, been told that I won't be good enough. My family have been contacted, and often I have found that sometimes some women aren't the best allies, and at the same time I found brilliant allies with other women. But it can be all really exhausting, and as you know, as women of colour, it's quite an exhausting thing. And how do you keep going? How do you not just give up? Because there are times where I'm just thinking, I'm 25, I could be doing anything else. Why should I carry on pushing through? And yeah, that's what I wanted to ask.
Okay, that's a very good question. To Rahina, sorry if I'm not pronouncing your name right.
No, it's all right. Thank you so much. This is the first Labour Party meeting I've been to in 5 years. And I don't want to take loads of time. I have a really specific geeky question about the Labour Party rulebook. Don't fall asleep. I was wondering if the panellists could really just comment on the late selection procedure in the NEC rulebook, because basically people from both the left and the right, it's not a right-left issue, but if you are networks, you've worked for the party, or you're fighting unions, you will be, if this policy comes in called the late selection procedure, where an MP stands down a few months before a general election, then the National Executive Committee can then pick the people on the shortlist. So no matter how hard you've worked as a councillor, I was a councillor when I was 21, I stood down when I was 28 because of this procedure. I tried to stand to be an MP, And basically, the National Executive Committee didn't let me and lots of people onto the shortlist to stand in their own area.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I know you.
I can answer that question.
Sorry?
Yeah, I can answer that. I can answer that question actually for you.
Regarding the late selection procedures, I'm totally for all positive discrimination, but in terms of the late selection procedures, they do discriminate against women, working class, you know, and people of colour. So I think that's a massive issue, and it's not a right or left issue.
That's a good question. And Vicky? Victoria.
Hi, good evening, sisters. And it's great to see Abena, Bell, people who I think are like my close sisters. And it's great to see them in Parliament, because for me, that's just people who look like me and talk like me. I think my quick thing is putting my mentoring hat on is for each of you, including Margaret, Taff and Sarah, what one practical idea, solution would you ask all of us or suggest that we should do after today? Because my thing is always, we can talk about what has happened, what hasn't happened, but I'm looking forward to thinking what practical idea or solution would you give all of us today? Because really, in a sense, we're the interested women who are in this call, or about all the other thousands of women out there who we know maybe want to be counsellors and whatever. What one practical thing would you suggest that we should do after today? Because I think it's important what happens after today rather than just now. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to start with Taff and then Bell. I think that with Victoria's question, it should be a question that we should end on a note with. So if you guys wanted to do that towards the end. So do Taff, do you want to go, then Bell, and then Sarah, then Margaret? If any of the points you want to cover.
Yeah, thank you. On Sabrina's question, I mean, why keep going? And you know, you get a lot of language crap with the standing, with the perseverance and the rest of it. And sometimes you do think, why? Because at one point I was thinking, I've always worked with professional people and I can't work with people like this, and it's going to be really difficult. When I did finally get selected, and I just thought, you know, how am I going to continue to work with these people? But look, it's worth it. I have been a counsellor for 9 years now, and I, you know, the work and the difference you can make to people really does keep you going. So if, you know, your skills are really needed, your background is really needed, you know, your representation is really needed. We aren't ordinary people, you know, we're not the white men that are privileged in some sense. You know, we come with our own backgrounds and experiences, and what is needed, and that's what's going to bring a difference and a change to your ward, your town, you know, the world. Together we will conquer the world. So I think, you know, my thing to you is just, you know, do keep going, because once you are in, you know, you will be able to make that significant difference. And even along the way, during your campaign, for example, or, you know, during your selection, you will come across people that you will touch and hopefully make a difference. And the one idea or solution for me is just, you know, shine, carry on shining, show your best side, carry on shining. That's what I would say. That is a solution to each one, to, you know, idea to each one of you, is just keep going and keep shining. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, Bell.
Sorry, of course, unmute. I completely agree with that, and in response to Sabrina, mainly it'd be if not you, then who? What I would remember is that every single time more people that look like us get in, it makes it easier for the next group coming forward. After seeing what Diane went through, as I said, I didn't think I would ever want to do this, but it was decidedly easier, although not easy, not at all. We have a different experience to what she had. There are some things that people just won't be able to get away with. So it just needs more of us. It needs more people coming through until we get to that space where it's not such a big deal. We don't face those challenges when we come through.
Sarah?
Yeah, to answer kind of Sabrina and Rahini's question in one, really, just don't give up. Yes, I know it is hard and there will be knockbacks. I was a candidate before I was an MP in Luton in my seat where I grew up in Hastings for 4 years. I was a candidate and I didn't win. And sometimes we don't win and sometimes there will be setbacks, but the fight, no one's going to give us anything. No one is going to give us anything. We have to work hard for it. And it is unfair, as Taf says, that we have to prove ourselves to be better than the man next to us or better than the other people that we're going against. But that is where we're at. That is the system that we're in. And we do have to challenge and change those systems. But ultimately, we can't give up because no one's going to give it to us. No one's given anything that we have right now to us. We have all worked hard for it. And the one thing that I would say, please do, apart from lobbying on the online harms bill, because I really want the internet to be a safe space for women, is to join a trade union. Please join a trade union, because they are... The labour movement is nothing without the trade union movement, and the trade union is nothing without the labour movement. They go hand in hand. And all too often I've walked into all male spaces within trade union meetings and look at the people that are being punished in the workplace at the moment. Look at the people that are literally on the front line for COVID. You've got hospitals, care homes, 70 to 80% of those people working in there on the front line are women. And we need a space to represent those women. And I think the trade union labour movement is exactly that space, but we need to own the trade union space as much as we do the Labour Party as well.
I don't know if there's one on, isn't there? I was going to say three things. Abena, first of all, because I'm the last one to speak, I'm going to say thank you to you, because you've chaired this brilliantly, and it's always really difficult to chair a Zoom. So thank you very, very much indeed. And it's brilliant to see you as chair of Labour Women's Network. I was in at the start of Labour Women's Network, so that puts me in perspective. I'm going to say some challenging things at the end. You don't have to be better. We're equal. That's the whole point, that we want an equal chance. We are equal, and that's got to be what drives us. And from my experience down the years, this is a marathon, not a sprint. We won't do it. Just keep in your mind that you don't have to do it all today. You've all got a lot of life in front of you, and just, there's a lot of time for you to achieve anything. And my only bit of advice, before we came on tonight, we were talking about babies, as everybody's knackered from having their babies. Unfortunately, I'm into grandparenting now, which is much, much easier because you can give them back. But the interesting thing I learned from because I was the leader of a council when I was sort of having little babies and things, is that you've in a way the way you survive is by, particularly as women, is learning to compartmentalize your life. So what's happening in your personal life and all the challenges we've got, your caring responsibilities, those are really important. They're important in your life, and if you can keep that separate from the horrible things that you confront, for whatever reason, the discrimination you face for whatever reason, that's not really you. That's not the real you. And somehow I always used to say I survived in those early years by distinguishing between what happened at work and how horrible people were to me at work, and then what happened to me at home and the family and the children I had at home. And then, so I think it's a marathon, not a sprint. We're equal. We're not, what we want is equality, not having to prove that we're better. And and just keep your lives separate. And that helps you to work and stay in the thing. And then finally, what do we do from here? Well, thank you to LWN for organising. I'll tell you what my idea would be, is we've got up to about 75, 80 people on the Zoom tonight. Let's all start there, okay? Share everybody's email addresses. We could start This is, you know, if you are all people who've joined tonight because you want to become a councillor, because you want to an MP, because you want to become a greater activist in the Labour Party, well, here's a network, share it and start from here. And if you haven't got, you know, if that helps, the sharing really helps, because you suddenly realise that what you thought was just absolutely because of you, you know, the nastiness that came because just who you were, you suddenly find it isn't. It's because of what you stand for, because of your gender, because of your race, your ethnicity, your religion, whatever it is, your disability, whatever it is. And I think, you know, maybe from tonight, if we just shared if we could organise that, Abena, that everybody shares the emails, and perhaps, you know, ironically with Zoom, we can get together more easily and then just start talking about the actual day-to-day problems we all face and help each other work through them. But you will all get there. And there is, honestly, when I first became an MP, there were more MPs to the name of John than there were women MPs in Parliament. Just think about that. There were no bloody loos and no women's lavatories, and the only ironing board in the whole of the Palace of Westminster was in the lady members' room. Outrageous. So we've come a little way since then. You've got to keep your foot on the accelerator. But if we work together, if we really, really work together, I'm sure lots of you will come through and you'll make brilliant, brilliant Labour activists and Labour representatives.
Yep. I just wanted to say thank you so much for the panel speakers. I think it's been really eye-opener. I just wanted to say also that it's not easy. And I know being a woman in the Labour Party isn't easy, and particularly if you're a woman of colour. I almost walked away from being active in politics a few years ago. And the only reason that I kind of persevered was because of a lot of women that supported me. And a lot of these women are in the call, in the Zoom call, who have supported me on my journey. Having allies is so important, and not just having allies for the sake of having allies. These people are going to be there that can help you, particularly through your mental well-being and self-care. I know that there are some people in the call that have gone through difficult journeys, particularly when going for public office. And I know that you have gone through traumatic experiences, but you can't allow that to consume you. I know that there are processes in the party that could be a lot better, and that these are things that need to be looked at. But with the Labour Women's Network, we focus specifically on training women for public office and trying to help you get the tools that you need to put yourselves forward. So looking at self-care, resilience, perseverance, identifying what your unique selling point is. So please check out our training courses. I hope you found this useful. My only thing I would say is, like Margaret said, and a lot of other people have said, is we need to keep this dialogue going. There's a lot of people that are already in positions of power, councillors or not, you know, try and help other people through those opportunities as well, because the only way we can move is through that. Other things I just want to ask is, if you're not, please join Labour Women's Network. We are a voluntary-led organisation. We do not make any money from this. We do it because we are passionate and we want to help change the system. And so please do, if you can, if you're already a member, please donate, because we need the finances as possible. Follow us on social media, come to our training, pass through motions through the CLP. There are a lot of women in this call. Follow them on social media, amplify their voices as well, because it's really being important. And I know it's not easy, but you can be an agent of change locally in your community and calling out sexism. It doesn't always have to be you. You can always find those allies that can do it. And particularly when you're under attack. So I finally just want to say really kind of thank you to kind of like Claire Reynolds and Jane Heggie, who have kind of organised this, who, you know, these women are amazing women. They multitask and they keep LWN going because they love LWN. And we really wouldn't have been able to have this event if it wasn't for their perseverance and resilience. So, and you know, I can't take the credit for all this. I've got an army of sisters behind me. And so it's important that, you know, I like to speak up about the work they're doing. So thank you guys for coming, and hope you found this useful, and catch you soon.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night. Bye.
Thank you, Abena.
Thank you.
Be safe. I love you all. Bye, guys.
Bye.
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 See you
Bye,
all.
Margaret. Bye, Jane.
Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Claire.
everyone.
Bye.
Stay safe.
Bye, John. Bye.
Bye. Abena, thank you so much.
Bye, Abena. Thank you.
Bye. See you. Take
And
care.
and Sarah.
Abena,
Bye.
bye. You. Thank you.